We really appreciate you being here this morning. Our two plenaries this morning and then at lunch are going to focus on the funding component. So I'm so happy to be here with you this morning to talk about philanthropy's role in powering community growth through trails and trail networks. I'm Liz Thorstensen. I'm Vice President of Trail Development with Rails to Trails Conservancy. And I'm going to start this morning with saying we're here in Cleveland for a reason. This city has become a national model for how trails and public space can reconnect people, places, and opportunities. Cleveland shows what's possible when philanthropy, government, and community pull in the same direction and come together. This is so important because disconnection is one of the biggest challenges of our time right now. We're disconnected by being on our phones, our computers. We see disconnection in communities, cut off from opportunity, or divided by highways or disinvestment. Trails are one of the best tools we have to bridge those divides. They're bipartisan, red, blue, purple, rural, suburban, urban. People just want safe places to walk, bike, and connect with each other. And philanthropy has been critical in making these connections happen. Philanthropy takes risks where sometimes government can't or won't. It brings people to the table who wouldn't normally sit together, and it helps ensure that equity and inclusion are at the center of the work. It elevates the importance of this work that we're all doing here together. Today, we're going to talk with four amazing leaders who are showing how philanthropy can be more than just a grant. They're helping communities tell their stories, build local capacity, and prepare trail projects and trail networks to win even further funding. We'll also look ahead at themes we should all be paying attention to and make sure that the public places that strengthen our civic fabric and our connection to each other in a time when that couldn't be more important are elevated. So with that, please help me welcome our wonderful panel who I'll be in conversation with this morning. Stuart Clarke, the Program Director with the Environment and Public Space Program with the William Penn Foundation. John Mitterholzer, Program Director for Climate and Environment and for Environmental Justice with the George Gunn Foundation. Joyce Huang, Chief Impact Officer with the Cleveland Foundation. And Jana Renner, Senior Program Officer, Paso del Norte Health Foundation. Welcome to the stage. Thanks, Jana. Thanks, Jeff. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. So excited to have our excellent panel and have different geographies and perspectives represented in this conversation. I wanted to kick off and just hear a little bit about your all's kind of flagship projects as they relate to trails and trail networks. And if you can kind of think about it in the lens of often we have philanthropy coming to the table to help us in the trail and active transportation space kind of de-risk our projects. I'm sure lots of other projects need de-risking too, but from that lens, I'd love for you to share what are some of the most effective philanthropic interventions you've seen or you've been part of implementing that help to kind of de-risk these trail and active transportation projects and move them forward, and how have your foundation's been so important to really key trail and active transportation networks? I'll start with you, Stuart.
Well, first, thanks so much for having us here. This is my first trip to Cleveland, and it seems like a wonderful city, and this is obviously such an important conference, so we really appreciate the opportunity to be here. The William Penn Foundation is proud to have been partnering with the Circuit Trails Network within New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Delaware for, New Jersey and Pennsylvania for over a decade, I think almost close to 15 years now. And as I suspect many people know, the Circuit Trails is an 800-mile trail system of which about a little less than half of those 8 miles have been constructed, about 100 miles over the course of the past decade. And the foundation's support, I think most of our support for the trails has been de-risking support. And I think an important element of that is the sort of patience and consistency. So we have been supporters for, as I say, over a decade. Our board recognizes that this work takes a good deal of time to be brought to fruition, and so has been quite patient and thoughtful in the way in which it's supported our investments. This means that we have supported organizations planning, relationship building, engagement with communities, all the kinds of really critical work that helps to de-risk projects by ensuring that obstacles are identified early on and strategies are developed to overcome those obstacles. I think the two other things I would point out that I think have been especially important for us are the support for, there is a Circuit Trails Coalition, so it's a coalition of over 60 organizations that are working on different segments of the trails. And this infrastructure for supporting the work has been really critical, and we've been really pleased and proud to be able to be partners with the coalition from the outset of our engagement in this work. And that's an incredibly important de-risking element of the work as well, particularly through the peer-to-peer learning that occurs as again, folks are able to learn from others about how to overcome, what kinds of obstacles to anticipate and how to overcome those obstacles. I think also our support for advocacy work, which is something that can sometimes be more difficult to come by, is an aspect of our investment that has been especially important, I think, in de-risking projects, in creating pathways for projects that might initially have appeared to be especially difficult or especially challenging. And the advocacy work has helped open up those pathways. So I think those are some ways that we have seen and have hoped that our support has helped to de-risk and establish and maintain momentum around the work.
And I would add, I think it's fair to say, the circuit was one of the early trail network models, and William Penn's investment in that, I think, really was catalytic for the rest of the country to have a model to follow. So.
We would love to think that.
Well, you should. I'm going to go to John, and then I think Joyce is going to riff with John next.
Yeah, hi. Well, thanks, Liz, and thanks to Rails Trails Conservancy for inviting me to the stage. Welcome, everybody, to my hometown of Cleveland. I'm really happy to have you here. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the Lake Link Trail. This is a great trail that's now fully complete and done, but in its original form, it was part of that trail is 1.5 miles of below-grade short-line railroad. And it was an incredibly risky project when a group of organizations met with me and started to talk about it. Because like a lot of trail projects, it was going to be $30 million, which was a lot of money. And there was a lot of uncertainty about how to attract the state and federal money that was going to be necessary. I feel we're a lot like William Penn. So a lot of what Stuart says, the funding we do, I think the additional thing I'd say is that we provide operating support grants to all of our grantees. And so that really allowed a group of people to spend the time and energy to figure out how to get this project up and off the ground. And in this case, the George Gunn Foundation was the first money in. So we did take some risk in that project. We didn't know where we were going to raise the $30 million, but I'll credit my boss at the time, Dave Abbott, for saying to me, like, this is our job. Like, we take the risk. We're gonna put the money in first. We're gonna give credibility to this project, and then we're gonna be able to then use that money to leverage the state and federal and other local philanthropy going in. And I think that's a really important role for us to play. I mean, just a fun side note of that project is that he asked me, what did I think we should do? And I said, I think we should do $1 million. And he said, that's not enough. And he doubled it and said $2 million, which was a great day to have as a program officer and great news to give. But I think much like Stuart, like we also fund advocacy. And a lot of your projects, as you know, like you need to sell them, and you need to be able to go out and make sure that people understand the value of those projects. And I do think it's our job in philanthropy to really be your side-by-side partner, to lend credibility to those projects, to lend credibility to your organizations, and then when necessary, put in the early, more risky money to help launch those things.
Thanks, John. Go to Joyce next.
Thanks. Good morning, I'm Joyce Huang. It's great to welcome you. I share the welcome that John provided. I'm here representing community foundations, and the Cleveland Foundation is the oldest community foundation, really born out of an innovation where we believe in the idea that collectively we can do more. So we were the first collective trust that pooled together resources to be able to provide hyper-local support in our place here in Cleveland. And for us, we have a suite of tools that we use, and my role is new in the foundation, where impact is not just with our grant-making dollars, which is what people mostly know about us, but we also have our donor-engaged work, and we also now have a growing real estate portfolio where we actually can invest in a place, in a neighborhood, and how do we then use all of those tools together to impact Cleveland? And I think for us, riffing off of the Lake Link Trail, our role in de-risking, as an example, is that we can use different kinds of tools to get things going. So most people know about grant making. We like to seed innovative ideas, come in early, to take a risk on something that might be completely new, kind of thinking about the whole system or thinking about a plan. We have done early design work. So for example, one of our kind of bigger transformations in the University Circle area was that we actually got 30% design so that we could transform and move to public transportation stations, and that actually allowed Cleveland to get 2 Tiger grants in a row, one after another. So grant making is, of course, one pool, but we also utilize program-related investments, which are very patient, low-interest loans that can be spent over a longer period of time. And what we did with one of the trails is we provided a $1 million PRI, program-related investment, to Trust for Public Land, so they could go out and acquire the land. So they could just start grabbing pieces, and there was less strings attached. They could sort of identify and go and be very nimble. And it was successful to the point where Trust for Public Land paid it back, and we were able to revolve that $1 million loan a couple times for that land acquisition. And so therefore, we were able to piece together parts of the trail. And then I think the last thing I would just add on to the coalition building and really supporting local voices. I believe that grassroots advocacy is really important when it comes to government. I just came from government as the city planning director, and there are several organizations here in Cleveland today who, really be able to provide that resident voice saying, we want trails, we want protected, separated bike lanes, we want to be able to have active transportation, and so we also come in to support that as well.
Excellent, thank you. I'll go to Jana next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jana Renner with the Paso del Norte Health Foundation. I am not from the Midwest. I'm in Texas, El Paso, Texas. Happy to be here. This is my first experience here with Rails to Trails. The Paso del Norte Health Foundation got involved with trails about 7 years ago. We're a little bit newer to this work, but very similar to you all. The county of El Paso approached us and asked us to help them develop the master plan for a county line trail. And we took the risk for that. And once that alignment was set, we were the ones that were like, this has happened before. This is a master plan's been developed and it's sat on the shelf for 10 years or whatever. And so we were the ones that decided to keep convening the stakeholders and the community members that had come together to create that master plan to keep the momentum going. And then about the same time as we were developing the master plan, the city of El Paso was able to, they worked with the water company to get a drain, kind of an irrigation drain, to access the right-of-way, and approached us, and we thought this would be a great place to put a demonstration trail in. And it's in a part of town that really doesn't have facilities for walking and biking. The sidewalk infrastructure is pretty poor. And this provided a 3-mile walking and biking trail for a community that really didn't, they were walking on the banks of this, of the drain already, but now they have a really nice trail with amenities. We really wanted to show the community what a trail would look like and what the entire trail would end up looking like. So this is, this demonstration project, then the city was so impressed with how the residents responded to that, they've invested for an additional 5 miles to that trail. And so we've been able to expand that, and it connects a few parks. There's 7 schools on the trail, and it's really added a lot to that community.
I love that. I love how you all were the innovation and the spark and the catalyst for the community to do even more. That's wonderful. So I want to, with that thought, turn to a related question, thinking beyond the grant funding itself, which we all know is very important, but I think of philanthropy as our strategic partners beyond just the financial support. And so I'd love to have you all, and I'll start with Stuart again, but have you all, how do you think about your role as that strategic partner beyond the funder in trail and trail network and active transportation projects, in convening stakeholders, aligning systems, sparking the systems, supporting storytelling, building communication and storytelling? Would love to hear your role in that. I'll start with Stuart.
Yeah, well, I think I would say 2 things about that. The first thing I would say is that our role as a funder, our funding role in that work is most important, right? So I think there are ways in which we try to be helpful, we try to be useful outside of the check, but the check is the check, and that's what's most important, and we recognize that. I mentioned earlier that there is a Circuit Trails Coalition, which really is the sort of organizational coordinating infrastructure for the circuit trails, and we were helpful in the coalition's starting, and we've been consistent supporters from the beginning, and it really does a great deal of that, and so there's perhaps less need for us to be involved in trying to undertake those kinds of activities because of all the work that they do. I think to the extent that there is a useful beyond the check contribution from us, it probably has to do with our participation in the Circuit Trails Coalition meetings and conversations. We are active, kind of normal participants in that process. And I think that does 2 useful things. The first, I hope, it signals to the members of the coalition the character of the partnership that we want to be in with them. And it's not a transactional partnership, it's a relational partnership. And we want to be in that conversation as a real partner that shares the aspirations of the coalition and that is eager to work with others to sort of figure stuff out. So I think just that signaling role is really important. And then, of course, being able to participate, and we appreciate the fact that we are able to participate in those conversations, just deepens our understanding of the work, deepens our understanding of the challenges and of the opportunities that are in front of the coalition and in front of the circuit trails. So we feel really blessed to be able to participate in that way, and I think that's probably the most important kind of beyond the check role that we play.
Thank you, Stuart. I'll go to Joyce next.
Sure. I think for us, I'd like to use a sports analogy. So thinking about funders as a quarterback in some ways. So I say that because for a community foundation, we often can see the whole field. So we see the different types of activities and grants and strategies that are coming together. And we can be able to layer those strategies as building blocks towards something greater. And so I'll give a quick example. Greater University Circle Initiative, which was a really catalytic opportunity to grow our second downtown, University Circle, which is where our cultural institutions, universities, and hospitals, including the Cleveland Clinic, university hospitals, are. part of that was saying, okay, we know that these institutions are going to make massive amounts of investment, about $3 billion of construction about 10 years ago. And seeing the field, the foundation brought together those institutions to say, all right, how do we come together to sort of transform this area? And not only just the neighborhood itself where the cultural institutions are, but the adjacent neighborhoods and how do we better connect across? And so that sort of convening power is part of the foundation's role, I believe, in seeing how all the pieces can come together, see where there's investment happening, see the opportunities and bringing people together. And a more recent example is with the city of Cleveland, Mayor Bibb took $50 million of the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act. He really wanted to do something that was leveraged and transformative. And $50 million for capital projects can go very quickly. But what he decided to do was say, look, we have an issue. We have a critical issue in Cleveland, which is that we have job loss, we have population loss, and we are not ready. We don't have land that's ready. We don't have, assembled land. Utilities are not ready. And so the mayor came to the foundation, endowed the $50 million of funds with the foundation so that can last forever. We put in funds as well to say we really support this. And now a nonprofit organization supported by the public sector is buying land, assembling it, and putting it together. But part of the beauty of this is that a separate project, which was around building a trail on our east side, which is a trail desert, we were able to say, okay, with the Site Readiness Fund, there's this other opportunity to layer on a trail to connect all these potential job sites and layer it into existing off-road and protected trails, right? So being able to sort of see the whole field and say, look, there's an opportunity to put these two really powerful things together and fund that and work together across public, nonprofit, and other sectors.
I love that public-private partnership and how that can just go on. I mean, in theory, into perpetuity.
Yes.
That's such a unique model. I'll offer the opportunity to Jana or John if you want to jump in. If not, I'll keep going.
I just want to say I love your analogy of the sports analogy of the quarterback. We do a lot of convening too, and we're kind of the one. I think in our community we're seen as a neutral party, and so we have the ability to bring all the different parties in and make sure that there is limited funding, and so it's kind of like, okay, which trail segment should be going next, and even if there is competition, we're making sure that funding opportunities are available at the state level, that the trail, at least one trail segment is going in every cycle. And so just kind of keeping an eye on things and keeping people kind of moving in the same direction, because, city government, county government, they've been great partners, but they don't always have time to talk to each other. And so there needs to be someone kind of checking in with everyone to make sure that we're keeping an eye on the big picture.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd add, I agree with all these different roles we play, but is we sit at a slightly different perch than all of you, right? You're actually in the weeds doing the work with your head down, trying to get these difficult projects up and off the ground and completed. And because of my perch, I often see people who don't necessarily know you. And so I think a big role that I play often in the community is helping to introduce people who are really doing great projects, meet other people who could be helpful to that project and who have expertise and knowledge that can help move those forward. And frankly, that's the most fun for me. I always say that it's not required for me to be the smartest person in the room. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but my job is to know who could be the smartest person in the room and help bring them into that room. And I love that part of the job. I think it's a really important role we can play.
Excellent. I want to talk about equity, inclusion, and community leadership. And there's been so much good work done in recent decades and years to try to shift power more towards communities, community leaderships, really into the the people. And so I'd love to have each of you kind of talk, or whoever wants to, talk about how your philanthropy is, helping to kind of instill that value, how you're empowering your grantees to carry that value, and maybe a little bit about the approach. Start with you.
Again, this is an area of work that has really been prioritized by the Circuit Trails Coalition. And so I would say, quite honestly, we have followed their lead. And so that's involved investing in research that they've undertaken to identify kind of what the most important barriers to participation in both trails work and also participation kind of in using trails, and what the most important obstacles and barriers are to that and have been to that. And as a result of that work, the Circuit Trails Coalition developed an inclusionary planning toolkit for trails to ensure that trail planning work was informed by an understanding of what those barriers and obstacles can be. I think also just, again, the sort of patient kind of posture that we've taken in investing in the work has enabled organizations that are working on the trails to develop the kinds of relationships within communities that can help them to overcome those barriers. I think the most important thing that we've done, and again, it is the case in all of our funding that we seek to follow the lead that is established by our grantees and by the community of work out there. I think the most important thing that we've done has been to help ensure that our board understands the complexity associated with developing trails and with bringing projects to fruition. And an important part of that complexity is ensuring that that's done in a way that is inclusive, that does result in, at the end of the day, in a trail that is used by everybody and that is understood to be owned by everybody. That can require, that can make the process take longer. It can make the process cost more. And it's, we recognized, I think, early on that it was really our responsibility to ensure that our board understood that, so that our board would be prepared to make the kind of investment and to sustain the kind of investment needed, not just to build trails, but to build trails in the right way. And so I think that's what I see to be the most important aspect of our contribution to supporting inclusive trails.
I love that, and having that point of view that it's it's a ongoing process, and if you want to do it right, you might have to be more intentional and not be super fast all the time. I'm going to go to John next.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Lake Link Trail one more time. So Cleveland is home to the first public housing units in the United States. And it was Lakeview Terrace, and they were really progressive. So that was at a time when we thought that housing needed to become a right. And we built this complex in Cleveland that had some really innovative things. It had community rooms. It had balconies that overlooked the Cuyahoga River Channel and Lake Erie. It was built into the grid of the existing neighborhood, so it wasn't isolated from the neighborhood, but it was actually a part of that neighborhood. And it was really planned and designed as a way to just say, you may need some help with housing, but you are part of the community, you are welcome, you are here. And 3 years later, we drove a highway through the middle of that complex. We did the right thing. Eleanor Roosevelt came out and cut the ribbon, and then we did what happened all across the country. And so for more than 50 years, that neighborhood has felt completely disconnected from the city, from the neighborhood. Literally a highway cuts them off from everybody else in the city. And Lake Link Trail is one opportunity for us to start to stitch back that neighborhood. That trail goes right through that complex. And so it was so important for us to ensure that every meeting we had about that trail involved those residents, that we really centered that entire work of that trail on how do we start to undo these wrongs that we've done to this community for 50 years. How can we get them access to the lake? This is a community that is literally 2 minutes from the lake. It takes a 22-minute drive to get around to the lake from this place. And this trail gave us an opportunity to bring that connection back. So I'm really, really proud of that trail. I think we have to constantly pay attention to ensure that everyone feels welcome on that trail, regardless of who they are. This is a trail that's near and dear to my heart, and my favorite thing is when I see kids, little kids on bikes and tricycles on that trail from that area, and I just feel like this is what this is all about, right? This is about everybody getting access and trying to undo some of those wrongs we've historically done to communities across the country.
I'll let Jana and Joyce, if you have anything you want to jump in on.
I don't. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's
that's
hard
lovely.
to follow.
It's hard to follow. I'll add that, for us, in looking at the trail maps, right, there's a big gap on the east side of Cleveland, which is where there's historically been a lack of disinvestment over the past 100 years due to policies like redlining. And so that was part of our decision to move from downtown Cleveland to Midtown in the Huff neighborhood. And what's really incredible is that we seem to be rowing in the same direction around investing equitably on the east side and with inclusion. So this idea that everyone deserves access to our lake, everyone deserves access to good bike infrastructure and trails. The city itself is putting in, I think, $100 million of capital improvements that will include safer streets and complete streets. And then the Metro Parks is going to be developing the lakefront with a $300 million plus project. And so where we sit, we want to say, how do we then connect, to the lake from where we are? How do we create those north-south connections that have historically not really been there? And then how do we create just better access in general? And so that's something we're thinking about as we move into the future.
Well, I'm going to stay with you, Joyce, because I think you all represent fairly sizable foundations. But I think a lot of the folks in the room, and we were lucky to have our board member, Elizabeth Lynn, represent community foundations yesterday at the World Cafe. And so many of you work with community foundations. So love, start with Joyce, and anyone else is welcome to please jump in. But yeah, tell us about, the importance of community foundations and their role in this ecosystem.
It's a great point. So I think for community foundations, I talked a little bit about the power of the collective and how, families, instead of doing individual trusts for their very specific area of interest, we pull together those family trusts and have a board that then decides on the grant making for whatever's relevant for that time. So I love to give this example that, 100 years ago, our founder, who was an estate lawyer, had a family who wanted to provide water for the horse-drawn carriages on Euclid Avenue, which is our main thoroughfare through the east side. And that trust, as well-intentioned as it was 100 years ago, is no longer relevant because we don't have it anymore. And so he called it the dead hand of philanthropy, and how, as well-intentioned during a time, it may not last in perpetuity. So this community trust idea allows for people to interpret those trusts, to provide variances on those trusts, and be able to fund the things that are most relevant and impactful to communities of that time. And so I've talked a little bit about our different tools, but I think the biggest thing is that we love our place, which is Cleveland. We want to be the most directive in our impact. Because we're a community foundation, we have some strategies, but we also respond to the needs of today. So we look at 50% of our portfolio being immediate impact. How do we support people who need things like health and human services, food, arts and culture? And then we also think about our longer term seeds that we're planting for 10, 20 years from now. And some of those things are seeding those new ideas, seeding the big plans that are going to drive us forward for the next 10 years, thinking about how to grow our region, to invest in vibrant neighborhoods, and to remove barriers for families on a systems level. So, for us, because we fund many, many things, we want to be the most strategic as possible. And so, I think that there's an invitation there to say, who is coming up with partnerships, who is collaborating together, who's bringing forward the strongest ideas so that we can say, confidently, we want to invest and we want to move this project forward.
Excellent.
Can I say one other thing
Yeah.
about the our role in making trails more inclusive? It's something that John's comments made me think about, and that is actually supporting activating trails, supporting programming on trails, that as part of the process of making them more welcoming, and which was an oddly slightly challenging thing for us to do. We kind of were in this mode where we thought what we were about was helping to build out this trail system, and we recognized that that needed to include activating the system. It needed to include not just thinking about like investing in work that had this sort of future outcome, which is a built trail, but investing in the nature and character of existing trails now. That the process of getting and keeping the communities open to and excited about trails, which was an important variable in getting the system built out, needed to include activating and keeping trails active and programming and so forth. So that's that the idea of kids on their tricycles. We support creating opportunities for that to happen. So just I wanted to put that in there as well.
I appreciate that. It's so important when we look at the work. You could get all the trails on the ground, you could have the infrastructure on the ground, but if no one is there to use it, or if people don't feel welcome, that's not success, right? So we all know how important that is. So appreciate you sharing that. As we wind down, I have 2 questions. I'm gonna split them up, but I'll have everyone answer. So the first is gonna be on like what are the trends? What are things this group, this audience should be kind of keeping in mind in terms of philanthropy and their work when they go to work with you all as part of this ecosystem. And then after that, we're going to end on some inspiring advice. But before we get to the advice and the words of inspiration, want you to we'll start with John. Kind of think about what are some of the trends we should be keeping in mind as we do this work.
I don't have to tell all of you, right? Like funding is much harder. And you all know that intuitively. And that's obviously a trend that I think we have to pay attention to. But I think you're also the solution to that problem, right? You are building these amazing places across the country everywhere. And you're able to physically take people like myself out on those trails and show them why they matter. So I think it's going to be harder to pitch the work that you do. But it doesn't mean that you can't get to yes. Like, I want to be really clear. So I think that you just need to keep doing what you're doing and really continue to do your best to get us out on these trails as funders, to really help us understand how this work connects back to all the work that we care about. Because I think that is a very real trend, right? I'm sure you're all feeling it, particularly with state and federal funding. But what you do does matter. And I think that you can get us to yes. It's just going to be a little bit harder, I think, than it has been in the past.
Jana, trends from your view in Texas on philanthropy, what should we be keeping in mind?
Oh, for us, I think we actually haven't invested. We've relied on our stakeholders to go after those big federal funding dollars in the past. And so we're actually starting to take a step back and looking at the next 5 years, how we can invest in more design of trail segments that we've prioritized so that they're more construction ready and more competitive. And we've done a little of that in the past, but I think we're going to be stepping up and doing that a little bit more. And again, just to echo John, is just, making sure that we're tapped into what's happening in the community and how we can help support and spur that continued growth.
So continuing the process, continuing the planning process. There's always room to keep going.
Right. Yeah. Joyce. I would just double click on that and say, philanthropy is great, or at least what we're interested in is getting those projects ready. We know we won't be able to fulfill the whole of the implementation, but whether it's planning, design, getting to that 30%, we are here to get those critical, impactful, transformative projects to the next stage. And so that readiness, especially right now, is going to be really critical. I don't know if this is a trend, but I think what's always been common is, wanting to see really strategic partnerships and collaborations, and, wanting our stakeholders and grantees to really be building that support from across different nonprofits and public sector. As mentioned, that is going to be really powerful, and that's a powerful story, I think, for the funder to say, look, we're joining in this body of work that many, many voices are supporting.
So partnerships, I'm hearing partnerships, cross-jurisdictional collaboration, getting the whole ecosystem together, keeping going with our process, and keeping getting projects ready. Any trends you want to share, Stuart?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that this is a trend so much as a risk. I think there's a risk of retrenchment. As federal and often state revenue streams tighten up, there seems to me to be certainly a risk that some foundations will see trails as kind of a luxury, a nice to have that need to be deferred while they focus their attention on what they consider to be more urgent issues around economic inequity, around public health, around things like this. And I think that it's really important to help philanthropy understand that trails can be a useful strategy in addressing economic inequity, in addressing public health inequity, and they're not, or they shouldn't be understood as distractions from that or alternatives to that, but instead as strategies for that. So I think kind of case making around that, having and building those cases in data and in research, of which there's plenty out there, will be. I expect that will be important, increasingly important. I mean, as I say, I think it's a risk rather than a trend. So maybe it won't happen. Maybe philanthropy will be forward-thinking and foresighted about this. But I would be prepared for the possibility that isn't the case.
I do love that perspective about making the case. And I think we all know that trails have really powered so much economic development. I think the Towpath Trail in Cleveland has really done so in our flats and really sparking new housing developments. We're hoping that this trail on the east side will both spark job attraction and business attraction. And I think that right now is a narrative that is going to be really important to get funding, just across the board, probably.
If I can just offer one other piece of advice. I mean, when you've got a funder like me who gets it and cares about what you do, don't hesitate to ask us to help you raise money. Like I tell my grantees, I'll talk to any funder you need me to talk to. I'll explain to them why I care about what you do, why the George Gund Foundation supports what you do. Use that, because I'm more than happy to do that for my grantees.
We're gonna end on some words of inspiration. How, it's a challenging time. It's a challenging time with uncertainty around public funding, especially on the federal level. So we'll start at John. We'll end on Stuart. What's our kind of what can you help us do to kind of carry the torch forward and help us feel inspired to do so?
I mean, just thank you. You do amazing work every single day. I mean, I love trails, I love parks, I love green space, but none of that happens without you. And I don't want you to forget that. I know it's hard to raise money at times. I know that you can get down in this work, but please don't forget that what you do is incredibly important to the life of everyone in the community you work in. We are all on those trails. We are all in those places. My family, my kids, my boys have grown up hiking those trails. It's a huge part of my life, and that's because of you. And I really just want to sincerely thank you for rolling up your sleeves and getting this work done all across the country, because it doesn't get done without you, and it's such an incredible part of our communities.
quick inspiration from
Sorry.
Jana? No, very good. That was excellent.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to echo everything John just said, but also just say, we continue to be here for you. Keep those conversations going with us, because even if, the answer is no, or we can't do that right now, having those conversations now can lead to things in the future. And so we've funded organizations, a strategic plan for, $10,000, and now they're one of our major partners. So, just keep us in mind, keep us involved, because we want to work with you. So
It's a process.
exactly.
Well, Liz, I think you set it up really well in your opening remarks that trails are a way for us to be more connected in a place, in a society that feels more disconnected than ever. And I think the work that you do is so essential. I mean, it is health, it is economic development, it's all of those things. It's appreciating our natural environment. And I just think that I agree with everyone that what you do is so critical. We've loved supporting trail work, and we will love continuing to support it, and to keep on going.
Thank you. Stuart.
Yeah, for us, trails, our support for trails, is about our support for community and economic development. It's about our support for public health infrastructure, but it's also about our support for democracy. We are the Environment and Public Space Program, and the purpose of the program is to support kind of improving and protecting the natural and built environment within communities and neighborhoods in the greater Philadelphia region. And we understand public space, including trails, to be critical civic infrastructure as well as critical public health infrastructure. We understand public spaces to be the infrastructure that enables the free expression of speech, that enables freedom of assembly. It's what activates those aspects, or it's an important part of what activates those aspects of the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. So, for us, at a time at which, these things are under assault, frankly, and in which public space is being circumscribed with the intention of dissuading, if not preventing, the exercise of free speech, and dissuading, if not preventing, the exercise of freedom of assembly. We just think it's super important to invest in open, safe, secure, welcoming public space. And we recognize that there's a difference between organizing a rally in a town square and organizing a walking group on a trail. There are obvious differences between those things, but they are also united, we think, in the degree to which they represent social solidarity, and they represent an assertion of the collective within civic space, and they represent ownership and stewardship of civic space, of the public. And so, I guess the point here in terms of inspiration is, this is where the fight is as well. It's not just in other places. It's here as well, and everything that you're doing is, in my view, I think in our view, an important part of what needs to be done right now to sustain our democracy. So we thank you for that.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for your inspiration and for reminding us how important our work is. Let's give our panel a round of applause.